So it's one of those things of like, I don't want to ask too many questions because I don't want to ruin a good thing. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the show before, but my mom is actually on the school board in the school district where I grew up. She, however, did not have the resources of the protagonist in this week's movie. It's back to school time, so I thought we'd throw in a movie about schools. We're going to be talking about Bad Education on the Everyman Movie Review. Hey everybody, and thank you for joining me for yet another episode of the Everyman Movie Review. I am so stoked to be back to movies, and that means we're back to the usual schedule. That means 2 episodes a week, of course, but we're going to talk a little bit about the people in the movie, we're going to talk a little bit about the movie, and then maybe a little spoiler section. At the end, I'll tell you my recommendation on whether or not this movie is for you or whether you should skip it. There's an old saying about something so nice you do it twice. Well, this is the second time around for Bad Education. Unfortunately, when I recorded it back in February, whenever that movie actually came to HBO, I had a technical problem with the audio and recorded basically none of it. So if you're a supporter on Patreon, patreon.com/Robert N. Cheek, then you got a weird episode with terrible audio and my raw thoughts right after I saw the movie. But I figured, hey, it's back to school time. This is a movie about schools. So why don't I do finally a good review of Bad Education? As I said, my mom is on the school board, the school district, so I know a little bit about the inside baseball of the school district. And I also went to Hofstra University, which is located right around the corner from Roslyn, New York. I got a lot of connections to Bad Education. But before we get too deep into this movie, let's get through the pleasantries, shall we? Bad Education was directed by Corey Finley. It is based on the New York Magazine article by Robert Kolker, but is actually written by Mike Makowski, who was a student in the Roslyn School District at the time that this happened. And I have always tried to find inspiration in my own personal life and haven't really found a great story to tell, or haven't found the time to research and write the story that is a good story from my own life or my own area of town, my area of the country. So I'm so happy that I was able to watch and now review something that was written by someone who actually kind of lived it. It is starring Hugh Jackman as Frank Tassone, Ray Romano as Bob Spicer, Walker White as Marianne, the amazing Allison Janey as Pam Gluckin, in a role that is so much different than anything I've seen her in. I guess I didn't watch Mom, so I only really know her from The West Wing and some very similar movies. Ashley Asford as Jenny Aquila, Geraldine Viswanathan as Rachel Borgava, Rafael Casal as Kyle Contreras, Ray Abruzzo as Howard Gluckin, Jimmy Tatro as Jim Boy McCartan, and Katherine Curtin making her second appearance in 3 weeks, I think, as Judy Shapiro. I'm not going to try to reproduce my first review in its entirety. This movie actually came out in April of this year, which isn't as long ago as I thought it was. I do way too many reviews, folks. It's only been a few months. I felt like it was like February or something, but back in April when I did my first one and it was ruined, I made sure and I had like a really long spoiler section, but this has been recommended to me even though I've seen it on HBO basically every time I turn on the platform. So if you have HBO, it's likely that it's been suggested, and if Allison Janey and Hugh Jackman and the story wasn't enough to get you to click, then I don't know that the spoilers are really going to ruin that much for you. I will do a small spoiler section, but we're going to go through most of the movie just in our regular review section. So Frank Tassone is a superintendent of the Roslyn School District, and once he is brought on as superintendent, basically everything starts going their way. Test scores improve, teachers are happier, parents are happier, the staff is happier, and it's like Frank has done something to this community and just brought them all together. So obviously, the way that it works in New York anyway is that the citizens vote on the budget for the school. And after a few successful years, he starts asking for bigger and bigger and bigger budgets. And I think the assumption of most parents is, well, if he did this with what we gave him, why wouldn't we give him more so that he can do even better? And he does. That keeps getting better and better and better. And in fact, when we meet and we enter this story, they are the 4th best school district in the country. Now, Maryland, my home state, is known for having the best schools in the country. As a state, #1 in the country many years. I think while I was in high school, all 4 years, and of the last couple of decades, it's been there a majority of the years. I never lived in one of those school districts. There was one very nearby to me that was one of the best schools in the state and a couple of the best schools in the country just a little while away from me. But I've actually been near the Roslyn High School. I've seen the Roslyn High School, and compared to the schools in Maryland that are like the best in the nation, it didn't seem that impressive. It seemed like my high school. And maybe that's because of this entire thing. Now, I was living in the area in the early 2000s when this all went down. I don't remember this at all. But I was also in college and involved in my own stuff, so could be that. We didn't really care about local stories, I guess, because this is just the place I go to school. I paid attention more at home, and when I went home, that's where I ran for office. So I was more worried about those. But we break into the story when Rachel, who is an up-and-coming reporter at the school newspaper, has some questions about the new sky bridge that's being built. And for those of you, I think mostly West Coast people who don't really know what a sky bridge is just a way for people to get around campus faster. At Hofstra, we had the Unispan. Highway 25, Route 25, whatever it was, or 24, can't remember, one of those in New York. It divides the campus in half. So everybody lives on one half of it, and all the classes are on the other half. And you'd use the Unispan to get across the highway rather than trying to wait at a light and cross or something like that. Well, so a sky bridge on this campus at Roslyn essentially would let people get on at different places and then not have to weave between the building and the complex, but just kind of go over them and then get off somewhere else, not in a car, on foot. And it just basically is one of those things that you can take pride in your school, that we have this really cool thing, even if it's kind of pointless. But Rachel examines the budget for the sky bridge and the budget for the school district, and she's starting to put something together about how, like, the roof leaks in some classrooms and our books aren't brand new. And yeah, our scores are high, but like, is that actually connected to money that's being spent? And she astutely knows that all the records for the high school, because budgets are passed by the citizens, are public record. So all she's got to do is ask for them and they have to give them to her. So she starts diving deep into this story. While Rachel's investigating, we learn a little bit about Frank and Pam Gluckin, who is his assistant superintendent. And these two are living some lavish lifestyles. They have nice clothes. Pam drives a Corvette. She just built a house down in Florida. Frank's got a couple of apartments in a couple of places. He goes on these trips that are business related but seem like a lot of fun. And you start to get the inkling, even if you don't know that much about the story, that something untowards is going on here. And untowards is not really a big enough descriptor. Basically, we are about to discover the largest embezzlement scheme in the history of the public school system. Millions and millions of dollars were taken by multiple people in this unorganized scheme to defraud the school district. Now, I have some overall thoughts about that and about the movie, but right now I'm going to jump into the spoilers so I can kind of race through the end of the movie here and get to my opinions about both that characterization and the movie itself. So, if you don't want the spoilers, skip down to the time down below in the description because the spoilers are about to start right now. All right, so Frank seems like this all-American guy, right? And he seems like he's got everything going for him. He's got the world on a string. But come to find out, as we learn through Rachel's investigation, Frank's got a bit of a secret. Frank is gay. And he had one of the apartments he has in the city, that's where his husband, longtime partner, lives. But he goes on these trips to places, and so he has like a business trip to out west, Arizona, I think, meets a guy. They end up having an affair. He goes back out there to see him again several times. He's getting plastic surgery to tighten everything up. He's getting all of his laundry done by dry cleaning, which I can't even imagine. Those bills by themselves were probably millions of dollars. But, everything about his life is top notch. And from the outside, as a person who lives in a relatively wealthy area, I mean, Roslyn is a wealthy area. It's a part of Long Island, so it's relatively wealthy, but it's kind of mixed. There are some like middle class, upper middle class, and then some lower upper class people there. You would look at that and be like, well, you know what? The scores are up. He's doing really well with our kids. It's okay. He's not doing anything overtly huge. He's not building a mansion. He's not like Pam driving a Corvette. He's a very laid back guy. He's got a nice Mercedes that I think he said he bought used. I can't remember that part exactly, but he's just subdued. He doesn't put it in everybody's face. But more importantly, every time a new student joins a school district, he meets with the student and the parent individually in the whole school district. If a parent has a problem, they can make an appointment and meet with the superintendent. That is unheard of across the nation. So it's one of those things of like, I don't want to ask too many questions because I don't want to ruin a good thing. and maybe people should have asked a few more questions. So the scheme ends up getting turned over because Pam has basically given out, she's in charge of all the money, by the way, and she basically gives out cards to everybody. And she renovated her house or built a house in Florida and is renovating her current house using money from the school district. Her car, school district. Daughter's wedding, school district. They're paying for everything. And dummy, son, her son, but her husband's stepson, goes to an Ace Hardware and buys a bunch of stuff out of town that is clearly for a residential renovation on the school district card. And somebody notices and they raise an alarm, and then Pam is going down. And I think my favorite part about this movie is that moment when you realize Pam is going down, and I think to myself, because I don't know this story, I'm like, wow, so it seems like this is wrapping up a bit early. What's going on here? And you see Pam like making insinuations to Frank, but you don't really, and like they're calling her a sociopath, and like Ray Romano in this is amazing, by the way, as Bob Spicer. Just like the way that him and Hugh Jackman are playing off each other, and the other board members too, just, it's fantastic. The interpersonal discussions and relationships are great, and they make the movie. If the story wasn't crazy enough by itself, the way that they play these characters makes it top notch. So Pam's out, and Frank convinces them not to call the police. That, like, let's clean up our own house. So they bring in an accountant, and he starts going through everything. And he realizes it's millions and millions of dollars, and he wants to call the cops. But no, we're not going to call the cops. And like, Frank's keeping everybody calm. And I start to get an inkling, and boy was I right, Frank is also in on this. Now, Frank is a little bit smarter. Rather than giving people cards to use and charging stuff to the school district, he basically is making up things that are getting made and they never actually get made, and then paying those invoices to people like his longtime partner, his husband, and that person basically gets to sit at home and not do anything and collect a paycheck in the form of a monthly invoice from a fake company to an address in the city. And some amount of computer hardware advice was provided by a company that didn't exist and only really exists in an apartment. So those kind of things. And of course, he does dry cleaning, he does meals, he does travel, everything's work related, right? It's about the appearance of success to get to number one, because the goal is always number one in the country. That's what he wants. And we see the scheme start to unravel, and Frank himself start to unravel at the same time. And, you know, so everybody goes down for this, and at the end they do a whole wrap up, but that I don't think is like the core of the movie. The core of the movie is Frank sitting there at the end, and he's talking about how it all went down. And he's like, it started out that I was out and I paid for a slice of pizza with the wrong card. And I said to myself, I'll do that on Monday. On Monday, I'll make sure I make it right. I'll pay for a pizza. But on Monday, nobody said anything. And then on Tuesday, I got a bagel and a coffee. Nobody said anything. And the way that these things can grow, that just, you know, once you allow yourself to do one little thing, it creeps and creeps and creeps and creeps. And next thing you know, you're buying a Mercedes and you're hiding the money. It's just insane to me. But at the same time, I mean, you know, if you felt like you were doing a good job and you're on a public servant salary, a superintendent salary is probably seems like a lot, $150,000, $170,000 a year, but you got to be around parents that are making millions a year, and you got to look like you're one of them. You got to fit in with them. I get it. I get the frustration. Anyway, so the whole scheme goes down. Everybody goes to jail. Money has to be repaid. That will never be repaid. There's just too much. It'll never be done. So Roslyn School District has to replace everyone, and they go from being the fourth highest school district in the country, and they start slipping down the charts. And that's going to kind of lead into what my whole point is at the end of this. So I guess that's all the spoilers really for this. So let's just bring everybody back in, and I have a moral opinion, surprise, surprise, about how people are treating it and the movie as a whole, and I'll give my recommendation. So let's get everybody back here, and we'll wrap up this review right now. So I think the whole moral question of this movie hinges on, does it matter? Yes, Frank and Pam and a lot of people stole a lot of money from the school district, but they also got results. And one thing I mentioned kind of at the end of the spoiler section there was that after Frank and Pam were gone, the scores started to fall. They fell out of the top rankings in the nation. So if Rosalind parents are paying money into a budget to make them the best school district in the country. Because listen, if you go to the number 4 school district in the country and you have a 4.25 GPA, you can go to any college you want. You're the best student at the best school. You're getting an Ivy League if you want. And I mean, yeah, there's the whole paying for it, but your parents are rich, or your scores are so good, the schools want you. So yes, the money was not going to pay for books or buildings or anything else. Getting results. And isn't that really what you're going to pay for? I guess it comes down to, do the ends justify the means? And that is always the moral quandary, isn't it? Do the ends justify the means? And nobody was getting hurt. Yes, some people were getting rich or living a comfortable lifestyle. And that money was not being spent on the students, which it should have been. But when somebody else took over and spent money on the students, they didn't do better, they did worse. So maybe it was Frank and Pam and everyone around him picking these students up and carrying them. And if that money went to make Frank easier or better at doing that, was it worth it? Getting away from the moral quandary of the situation, listen, this movie is really well done. Really well done. I remember that I was watching this as we were kind of heading into the worst part of quarantine. Like, we had just locked down. We were stuck inside for long periods of time. I'd been watching a lot of stuff, and I was looking for something good that would enrapture me, and this absolutely did. I've been stuck inside for about 2 weeks, I think, at that point, with Corey, the other half of the Oh The Anthem podcast. We do a weekly podcast at ohtheanthem.com, at Oh The Anthem on our social media networks. And, so we just can't get away from each other. And I wanted to find something that I could kind of escape. And this movie offered that. Allison Janey in an amazing, amazing role as this character. Something that is, and I realized during this review, she's kind of the same person in I, Tonya, except for more old and gritty, but the same attitude. And I realized I think I like that Allison Janey more than I do the nice West Wing CJ Allison Janey. And that might make me a terrible person. But beyond that, Hugh Jackman as this amazingly dynamic character, just so good. And all of the members of the school board, but especially Ray Romano as Bob Spicer, just everything was hitting on all cylinders. And the story is so riveting that even if you know how it ends, even if you know inevitably where this is going, which you probably did if you saw any of the marketing materials, you're still kind of hoping, well, at least I was still kind of hoping, that somehow they were going to get away at the end. And that is the best kind of movie, I think. That even if you know what's going to happen, it's Titanic, right? No matter what story you're telling, that boat is going down. And if you can keep me in the movie, I think that's a success. So I think that this was 2 hours and I think 20 minutes well spent. I got a lot of stuff vying for my attention. I'm running for president. If you haven't heard that, you can check out Rob Cheek for Prez on all your social media networks, or Rob Cheek for President, the website. I'm keeping up with all my stuff, Robert N. Cheek on all your social networks, and robertncheek.com, where you can find links to these reviews and the new podcast, the daily podcast that I'm doing, and everything. My book's on Amazon. It's all available there. And of course, I'm keeping up with the Everyman movie review social medias. You can find those links down in the show notes below. So with all of that stuff vying for my attention, it's so good to find a movie that just draws you in, that kind of enraptures you, where you can just turn the brain off and enjoy what it is you're taking. And it's super rare. This is also one of those movies that I think everybody will enjoy. There's nothing super bad about it. There's nothing super bad about it at all. I mean, maybe a small, Frank has to be in the closet and hide who he is. And I can imagine that for some people who have been in that situation, it might make you feel some kind of way. But otherwise, it's literally just the most wholesome movie you can imagine, and the most not wholesome movie topic that you can imagine as well. You can watch it with your parents. It's totally safe for that. Some cursing, but I think that's all right. You can watch it with your friends. I watched it with everybody who I was quarantined with, and everyone seemed to enjoy it. So I think that's the best kind of movie. So if you get 2 hours, no matter who you are, I think Bad Education is going to be 2 hours well spent. So I'll leave the link down in the show notes as well, so you can go through, find it on HBO or wherever else it may be streaming at this point. Go and check it out. It's fully worth it. And another thing you should check out is the next episode of the Everyman Movie Review. We are, of course, doing 2 episodes per week, every Thursday and one day in between. So regularly, it's amazing me I can even keep up this pace. But hell, make sure that you check out the new episodes. A lot of good movies coming up, and you're not going to want to miss any of them. But Until then, please take care of yourselves and each other. Have a great week, everybody.